about 3 years ago now. I was staying over at my ex's house and I was just playing some Far Cry 3. And while I was playing it, her stepdad, who had only been married to her mom like 2 weeks after meeting her, that entire family was a circus that I could make an entire anthology about. But anyways, this dude comes in, looks at the screen, and goes, "Oh, you know the real stuff isn't like that, right?" Thing is, I wasn't using a 50 BMG to cap a guy silently at point blank range. I wasn't tanking 12 gauge constantly, and I wasn't going toe to toe with a tiger. I was walking through grass. Now, I bring up this story because I feel like too often there's this whole idea of like, oh, I'm cool because this isn't realistic, and I'm gonna point out that it's not realistic, so you know how cool I am. But here's the thing, I know it's not realistic, it's a game, and that's why I'm playing it. So I feel like this whole idea of just rating games based on their realism, talking about whether or not they have any value based on how realistic they are, is kind of bullshit, because is any game realistic? And more importantly, do we want them to be realistic? I'm Pliskin, and today we're going to be talking about that.
Okay, just a second. Huh? What's wrong?
Spread your ass open, soldier.
What is realistic combat like? Well, you don't really need to be in the military or have experienced a live battlefield to be able to answer this. Anyone who's grown up abused, has been mugged on their way to work, or has been exposed to violence throughout their life could tell you. There are no rules, it's never fair, and life is extremely fragile. Now, of course, there are some games that try to take the whole basis of realism and put it into their combat. A good example of a genre that does this would be tactical shooters, like Insurgency. Here you really need to rely on teamwork and tactics if you want to come through. Here's the thing though, even if you do everything right, you might get killed unfairly. Maybe a guy just whizzes around the wall and scopes you point blank with a Mosin. Maybe a guy with a shotgun just ignores all your bullets and puts a round into you. There's a lot of weird bullshit and jank in this game. But here's the point, ironically enough, the jank is the most realistic part. Those bullshit deaths where you do everything right, but still get fucked up because, oh, there's a grenade next to you, or oh, an enemy just happened to shoot at the wall that you were behind and the bullets hit you. That's realistic combat right there. There is no clear gameplay loop to victory, it's a lot of chances being taken. Another example of a game that's constantly held up as having realistic combat would be The Last of Us. You have that fragility of life there. One lucky punch can kill you. Enemies can get a shot off much quicker than you can without warning. Getting into melee combat is almost suicide because the enemy is just going to gang up on you or shoot you while you're busy trying to punch a dude. This is all pretty realistic and depicts the fragility of your life. But then you have game-breaking glitches, you have deaf enemies that will completely ignore you when you're choking their friends, even though they could clearly hear you. The best example of this could be seen towards the end of the game. Like, just check this out. As realistic and as tense as the combat sections might be, it doesn't change the fact that this game has fucking zombies in it. But I mean, overall, yeah. Insurgency and Last of Us both have moments where they kind of capture what it's like to realistically experience a dangerous situation. Again, the whole tactics-heavy focus of Insurgency, and then in Last of Us how sometimes the best way to come out alive is just to avoid the fight entirely. Throw a smoke grenade and run through the enemies while they're all confused, rather than trying to go around and John Wick them. That's realistic. realism isn't fun, it's not cool, it's unfair, it's unrewarding, and encourages you to use exploitative tactics. Going back to the whole John Wick example, you know who would be John Wick in real life? You remember William Dafoe's character, the sniper? Those are the real John Wicks of real life. The guys that play things so cheesy that you don't even see them when they're coming to kill you. That's like the only feasible way to be like that, predator. Just removing yourself from the close quarter combat equation entirely. That's realistic badassery right there. And while there are some games that try to portray this, half the time when we're talking about realism in our games, we're not actually talking about wanting our games to be realistic. We're talking about our desire for hyper-reality. Most of the time when we think of fun realism, we're thinking about hyperreality, which is where the distinction between reality and fiction become hard to determine. Snake Eater is the perfect example of this. On the one hand, you have out-of-the-box tactics, sabotage of enemy supplies, eating, healing, etc. All these nitty-gritty details that you don't normally find in games that are incredibly realistic. But on the other hand, you have a man that shoots bees out of his mouth. You have Snake tanking multiple 12-gauge rounds. And of course, you have the series staple of super-powered suppressors. Yes. Hyperreality. So it's simultaneously incredibly realistic and simultaneously incredibly unrealistic. But it's the unrealistic gamey bits that make us be able to appreciate the experience as something fun and allow us to take notice of the realistic details without us rage quitting or getting upset with bullshit deaths or unfair situations like in Last of Us or Insurgency. I mean, yeah, your game might have squad tactics and realistic combat, but does it have the squirrel? I mean, honestly, if you're into realism, you shouldn't even really be playing action games. The most realistic game I know is called Africa. It was one of the first PS3 games. You go around on this little safari and your job is to take pictures and catalog different wildlife species on a given reserve. This is pretty fucking realistic if you ask me. And that's because in real life, a lot of the things that we can do that are fun, engaging, and adventurous usually don't involve us putting our lives on the line while someone else is shooting at us. Honestly, I think the whole realism critique of games is mostly by old men trying to be relevant, but it's like, bro, no one cares. It's a game, that's why I'm playing it. Halo wouldn't be fun if it was realistic. It's fun because it's a game with consistent rules, telegraphs, and intuitive interactive design. So next time you're sitting around having someone be like, having some tryhard sit there and try to tell you, oh yeah, this game actually isn't realistic, it would more so work like this, blah 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 blah, for the sake of trying to make themselves look cool or trying to devalue you for liking something, just remember it's total fucking bullshit. No game is realistic. No movie is realistic. Because realism isn't fun.
This is Solid Snake. Hey, subscribe to Pliskin Boy. God damn it.
You heard him.